joining us to hear and learn a little bit more about our Community Waste Reduction Grant Program for our 2021 cycle. My name is Christy Higginbotham. I'm the Programs Administrator, and I administer our grants programs at SWACO. And I think I'll just turn it over to each one of the gentlemen to quickly just introduce themselves.
Sure, I'll go next. My name is Andrew Booker. I work with Christy at SWACO, Programs Manager. Glad to see that we have, it looks like over 30 participants today, so hopefully it'll be a good presentation. And let me hand it back over to Kevin to introduce himself. You're muted, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Kevin Weaver, Director of Public Service for the City of Westerville, previous grant recipient, and happy to be here to talk a little bit about what we've done in the past.
All right, I guess it's up to me next. Hi, I'm Vince Roberts. I'm with the Columbus Regional Airport Authority. I'm an energy and environmental specialist with the Airport Authority.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, so we're just going to jump right into it. Andrew, I think if you could, oh my goodness, advance the slide. If you wouldn't mind just jumping into a little bit about some of these technical aspects quickly for our guests, I appreciate it.
I will do that. Thank you, Christy. Well, again, folks, thanks for bearing with us as we got some of the technology squared away. If you're like me, over the last few months, you've had to learn a lot of different Zoom meetings, go-to all kinds of different platforms to do these kind of online presentations and webinars. I just want to share a couple things about this particular one that you've logged into, which is go-to. We have, it looks like 32 attendees today, and we're happy that you're here. Because of that number of attendees, everybody is automatically muted, so we won't be able to hear you as we do our presentation today. We do want to make it, we have prepared to answer your questions, and we're going to have several periods of time during the presentation when we will be kind of opening it up for questions. And so in order to do that, you're going to have to use this control panel that is provided on your screen. And so this first slide that Christy is showing us indicates that that control panel can kind of shrink down into a little bar on the right-hand side of your screen sometimes. If that happens, you just click that orange arrow and it will expand. And then once it expands, you've got some options. And so if you can go to the next slide, Christy.
Yes.
There we go. So what you should see is, I'm going to point to two things. Or I'm going to point to one thing. We don't need to worry about the audio because all the, we got that worked out with Kevin and Vince. And so you should have a little section on that control panel called questions/chat. And so if you'd like to communicate with us, if you'd like to ask a question or have us repeat something, you'll have to enter it in that, you'll have to just click that little white triangle. It'll open a box. You can ask a question in that little box. I'm going to basically the entire presentation, I'm just going to sit back here, monitor questions. I'll either respond to them directly or in all likelihood, I'll ask Christy, Vince, or Kevin to answer them. So you can ask a question at any time during this presentation, but we also will have some particular question and answer sections built in. So with that, hopefully that explains how to communicate with us, and let me hand it back over to Christy to get us going.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andrew. So yeah, this is our agenda for the meeting today. We've got about 45 minutes allotted. I'm going to jump in with a brief introduction to SWACO programming and focus a little bit on our community waste reduction grant in the cycle that we're in currently. Then we will turn it over to Kevin Weaver with the City of Westerville and Vince Roberts with the Airport Authority to share a little bit more about the projects that they were awarded funding for and their implementation. And then we'll jump back into CWR and review applicant eligibility and some basic parameters. And as Andrew had mentioned, we'll be taking Q&A throughout the webinar. So feel free to enter your questions as we go along. Before we jump into the Community Waste Reduction Grant Program, I'd like to first quickly share with you a little bit more about SWACO's mission and some of the programs that we offer. So we are a public entity. We're a solid waste district, one of 52 in the state of Ohio. In addition to serving as a solid waste district, we also own and operate a public landfill, the Franklin County Sanitary Landfill. And we accept primarily municipal solid waste, which is comprised mainly of commercial and residential materials. So our vision is a community that's environmentally safe and resourceful, and our mission is to improve the community's solid waste stream through effective reduction, recycling, and disposal methods. And so to that end, we strive to educate all of our stakeholders and residents and businesses about the importance of diverting materials from the landfill through source reduction, reuse, recycling, and composting. And so we've worked really hard to position ourselves as a leader in environmental sustainability. And we offer a wide array of programs to assist with these efforts, which are available to all Franklin County residents. Some of those include providing assistance to the communities within our jurisdiction. There are 41 for the provision of recycling services. We also have a school program where we will help them execute contracts to include the provision of recycling services. We also provide recycling drop-off programs throughout Franklin County for residents and businesses to use for commingled recycling. We fund yard waste diversion programs throughout for residents. We also have an environmental crimes task force program where we work with the Franklin County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, the Sheriff's Department, City of Columbus, and Columbus Public Health, and Franklin County Public Health to investigate and prosecute illegal dumping. We have resources for e-waste and household hazardous waste disposal and recycling programs. And then we also have school programs that we offer resources to teachers and students for educating them on the importance of recycling and waste reduction, as well as providing landfill tours. We not only provide landfill tours to students and schools within Franklin County, we also offer them to residents. And right now they've been suspended due to COVID, but you can learn more about all of these programs and services by visiting our website. So kind of jumping into community waste reduction grant, we have two grant programs. We are in the CWR cycle currently. We also offer the event waste reduction grant program. Both have different cycles. And again, we're created to further our mission of reducing the waste stream. These programs fall under the purview of the Innovation and Programs Department, which is focused on building collaborative partnerships that impact and improve the waste stream, also leveraging the waste stream for economic benefit, all while contributing to a safe and healthy community. So through this process, we hope to identify unique opportunities in materials diversion programs with partners and fund sustainable projects and programs. And I would just say that, you know, for those that are interested in applying, it's important to design programs that are transferable, scalable, as well as sustainable. We really like to implement programs that others can serve as models to other similar organizations. So this is a competitive grant program. Applications are weighted against each other and evaluated by an internal SWACO review committee. The committee is made up of representatives from our legal, finance, and innovation and programs department. In order for an application to be eligible, there are some fundamental criteria that must be met. So for this cycle, all activities must occur in the 2021 calendar year. Eligible applicants include governmental entities, schools, parks, and nonprofit organizations. And the activities that you're requesting funding for must occur within SWACO's jurisdiction and must also be submitted by the organization that's responsible for implementing them. So SWACO's jurisdiction is all of Franklin County, and it includes the cities of Canal, Winchester, Dublin, New Albany, Reynoldsburg, and Westerville. It does not include Pickerington or Lithopolis. While some of those communities, parts of them are in Franklin County, 50% of those communities are outside of Franklin County, and therefore they are not within our jurisdiction. So this slide shows you all of the partners that we've had the pleasure and good fortune of being able to fund and work with since 2016. We have a number of communities, we have a number of nonprofits as well represented here, and we've had some real opportunities in collaborating with all of them. You know, not only do we like to serve as a resource and provide technical assistance to all of our partners and recipients, we also look to learn from you and what works for you and what your successes and challenges are as well. And so it's a two-way street, and we really appreciate the opportunity to work and fund these programs. Projects should emphasize partnership building and collaboration. And in 2020, I'll just kind of give you a quick idea of some of the projects that were funded in 2020. We funded a number of community food waste drop-off programs, including the city of Westerville. You'll hear from Kevin about that in just a little bit. But this is exciting because it is our largest sector of waste, and these programs are gaining traction. And so you'll hear a little bit more about those later on in the presentation. We also funded grant for Franklin Park Conservatory to expand and improve their recycling program offered to visitors, and Columbus City Schools. We funded a program to help them install water bottle filling stations for staff and students. And some of our funding with the Airport Authority also went towards this, and Vince will talk a little bit more about that too. So you can learn about more of the projects that we've funded in the past by visiting our Community Waste Reduction Grant website. You can also download the application there. We encourage you to do that, read through it. Please contact me with questions and or ideas. And yeah, we just really encourage you to do that before you submit an application. So going back a little bit to 2019, I just wanted to share kind of a dashboard report with you that illustrates the types of activities that were funded in 2019, the organization type that received the funding, and then share a little bit about the impacts that were reported as a result of these projects. And so we have everything from outreach and awareness activities that were funded to reduction, reuse, food waste diversion. We've funded waste assessments and studies as well through this grant program, and recycling, of course. We have a number of community recipients, school recipients, nonprofit and governmental recipients. And so, yeah, we're excited to report that in 2019, as a result of these projects and collaborations, we were able to divert almost 222,000 pounds of materials from the landfill. And this also, in addition to that, we were able to divert over 20,000 meals and get that into the hands of those that need it. Almost 3,200 pieces of furniture items were donated and diverted from the landfill, as well as over 104,000 disposable plastic water bottles were saved as a result of using the water bottle filling stations. This slide just really illustrates the program's growth. So we continue to fund more and more grants each year, and it shows you a little bit about SWACO's contribution as well as our recipients' contribution. We do require 25% cash match when you apply for the grant program. And so we have project categories as well. I mentioned some of these slides back. includes outreach, education, and awareness. So this could be funding requested for curriculum or the development of other resources for enhancing public education and awareness. Also waste reduction and reuse programs. And so a program that comes to mind that did both of these was Otterbein University. We funded in 2018. We funded water bottle filling stations for them as well. And they were able to show us when they measured their impact that they reduced the number of single-use disposable water bottles that they purchased by the case as a result of offering more of these refillable water bottle stations to students. And again, recycling and food waste and organic waste diversion are also among those categories. All right, so I am going to turn it over to Kevin Weaver now, Director of Operations for the City of Westerville. He's going to share a little bit about the 2019 Community Waste Reduction Grant Award, a little bit about his 2020 project that's in progress, as well as share a little bit about his experience in terms of applying for a grant and really what that entails and the work that goes into completing the application. Kevin?
Good. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. What we're looking at on the screen right now is our 2019 project that involved working to improve our uptown recycling situation. As of about 3 years ago, we had done a number of checks, and basically our recycling was 100% contaminated. We weren't able really to recycle anything out of the containers that were labeled recycling in the uptown area. And when they decided to redo the whole uptown area, sidewalks, street, everything, we had a golden opportunity to try to get a refresh and start the process over. So the blue container here is our new container, which is great. It follows all the best practices. It has text on the item that tells what should go in there. It has a small opening which helps to confine other trash from being able to go in there. And each one of these, as you can see in front of Union Savings Bank there, is paired with a trash can as well, so that the people have an opportunity to dispose of material. We will end up putting 14 of these containers into the uptown area, and we will have grant funding for 10 of those. So I guess that's the first comment I would make is even if you don't feel like funding is available for your whole project, don't hesitate to go ahead and jump in and try to get some of the project funded as well. We did a pre-study on a couple of cans in the uptown area, and we hope to do a post-study on that when all is said and done. Not we hope to, we will do a post-study to see just how much material we're able to recycle. That project is nearly complete now, which is why it's labeled as 2019-ish uptown recycling, because this project was intended to start last spring. We had a utility issue that came up at the last minute and basically shut the project down for a 6-month period. We thought we were going to be able to get these containers squared away. Christy, if you want to go on to the next slide, I think we can move on to there. No, thank you. We thought we were going to be able to still get the containers purchased because of how it fell with the contractor. We had some struggles, and unfortunately, I ended up getting in touch with SWACO significantly later than I should have on that project. So part of the message that we'll see on the next slide is communication, which really, as soon as you have any inkling that you might have a problem meeting a deadline because of something outside of your control, I would encourage you to get in touch with our partners at SWACO. They've been really great to the city of Westerville, and I appreciate all their help with trying to resolve that situation and allowing us some flexibility in terms of being able to finish that project up this year as the contractor was able. So I appreciate that. Were you able to advance, Christy, at this point? If not, I'll keep talking. I'll tell you a little bit about our 2020 project. Is a food waste initiative We've been very excited about this project. The other piece of communication I wanted to talk about is really to be flexible in your process. We had a reasonably specific vision of what we intended when we first started thinking about starting a food waste drop-off program. And I not only really appreciated the partnership with SWACO, but also the other communities that have already done similar things. So we went and visited Worthington and Upper Arlington and talked to the folks there and really got a lot of good feedback as far as what was working for them and what wasn't. So we had originally not really been intending to do any giveaways or anything to try to help promote things. But what we ended up with was our little composting buckets. And so the top gives you some idea what to compost, as does the side, and has the locations on it. And we gave away, and I'm trying to figure out which way to turn this, the example bag so that everybody knows that the only bags that we're allowed to have in our composting facility are BPI certified bags. So we started out having bought 300 of those buckets, and I was astounded at how quickly they moved along and went out, especially once we really got our communications folks involved with social media. So we had a point in time where we had a 50% increase in the number out. Something like 125 in 2 weeks went out. So it was really successful, and I had to order a few more buckets. So we ended up with a total of 400 and are down to about 30 of those buckets left at this point. And the real beauty of that is by giving away a product and basically trading that for contact information, we've been able to keep up with those people and send them updates. So, and so we began with 2 containers at each site. And here at my office at 370 Park Meadow Road, we're up to 4 containers. And up at the Parks Maintenance Building on Westdale here in town, we're up to 3 containers. And we're getting, at this point, about 1,600 pounds a week with that program, which I am very, very pleased with. Last week, we passed 10 tons of material that had been composted through the program already over the first 4 months. And that is a big win. And we're right on track with what we were hoping to be able to divert, which was about 55,000 pounds. We announced a much more modest goal to the community, but that's really what we were hoping for was a pretty big number. So the other elements that I wanted to talk about as far as the application go are basically get started. If you haven't started already, the application itself isn't all that burdensome. The things that really take time, though, are some of the things that you have to get from other folks. So cost estimates, proposals. In some cases, people have to get approval from a city council or a board before they're allowed to apply for a grant. In our case, we're allowed to ask for approval after we receive the grant, and that's generally what we do. So I would just say go ahead and get things rolling as soon as you can, and make sure to get things put together so you're not hustling around at the last minute. On the food waste program, there is a composting community group that has been formed, and we're working to get that group together at this point, which is really exciting because it's helped me a lot to be able to talk to the other folks, see things as basic as traffic around the centers. In some cases, one of the communities was having difficulty with people basically whipping into the parking lot and whipping back out and causing some hazards to the staff. So by positioning things carefully, you can avoid many of these issues that some folks have. So I think that is it. Without the pictures, it's not very fun, but we'll keep on trying. And I'll pass it over to Vince to talk about the airport and the wonderful work they're doing over there.
Let me jump in here real quick, Kevin. Thank you. That was wonderful. And I appreciate you kind of freestyling there while we didn't have slides to show. Christy has completely lost internet, so we're just kind of going to backfill here for a second. I am going to hand it over to Vince and get him started. And Vince, let me unmute you. And Vince, if you can just kind of go from memory, I'm restarting the presentation. I'll be able to show that in just a second. Okay.
So at the Columbus Regional Airport Authority, several years back, I'm going to give you some background, we were having some issues where, similar to Kevin, we were having like a 100% rejection rate and contamination rate on our recycling. Of course, that had a lot to do with Rumpke and also West Rock refusing our loads when they went there. So our executives at the time decided, hey, we need to do something about this because we're letting the public know that we're actually recycling and it's not being recycled, it's going to the landfill. So we needed to do something about it. So as a result of that, we ended up having a project management team put together, which studied our recycling at the John Glenn International Airport Terminal, and they came up with some solutions for us. But mainly we were having issues with food waste, contaminating, being put into the recycling and contaminating our recycling, especially Starbucks, by the way, coffee cups. And then we also had issues with our brand messaging. Our labeling of our containers was identified as being inadequate at the time. So we actually went one step further before we implemented anything, any of the recommendations. We actually had a Lean Six Sigma team, green team, take a look at in more detail of what is actually transpiring, and also to allow us to measure, our waste as it goes out, and our recycling rates and our diversion rates, for that matter. So as a result of all of that, we ended up still identifying that we still needed to improve our graphics, and we wanted to implement, as it shows on the slide there, some extra water fill stations. And here again, our main goal was to increase our recycling rate and reduce our contamination, and also reduce single-use bottles, hence the water stations. As a result, I'll fill you in for more, is that if you'll just go to the next slide, I can kind of elaborate there. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. And yes, that's me digging in the trash there. And that was fun. So we actually did a pre-audit to see where we were before we applied for the grant. And this helped us, validate the data when applying for the grant. So it's important to have a lot of that data up front to make it easier when you're applying for the grant. And also the labeling, we show our new cans down there on our new labeling on the receptacles, which we were in collaboration with other airports. Hold on a second. Other airports, and there was no universal consistency across the board with labeling. So what better approach to take than to get with SWACO and see what the community was doing and have collaboration on our labeling and some input for our brand messaging. And that's our end result there, is it makes it more visible and easy to spot. And ours was way outdated. So that helped out tremendously. So then, after we did the pre-audit, did the application, did the labeling, we went back through, believe it or not, in January of this year, and did the same thing again. And yes, that would be me digging in the trash again and sorting. But we collected a lot of data, took a lot of photographs, and figured out that, yes, food waste is definitely the majority of the waste that's contaminating our recycling at the terminal, but we got the data to back it up. So in addition to that, we were also doing looking into the pour stations, which you see in the third picture, and that actually has helped us out. We actually put one at each one of the control points prior to going in to the security area, And we found that a lot of individuals really liked that, and we saw a lot of folks pouring their liquids out and then recycling the bottle right next to it, which that's a huge success for us there. So, but it's still difficult to get folks to do that. So we still have issues with contamination. It's a growing initiative that's going to continue on, and so we'll go to the next slide. I wanted to show you the 4 stations, or the refill stations.
So Vince, Christy's doing her best on her end, so let's just see if she can get that slide to move forward.
Okay. So we were previously using some fill stations. So as a result of the grant, we also added an additional 2 pour stations at the airport, and we probably will continue to do that. So if she gets the pictures up. But that was definitely well received across the board, and it's numerically calculated or tabulated, you know, so you have your data to go along with it to show how many bottles were refilled at each one of the stations, and that's how we got the data to back that up. So I guess that's about it. We moving forward in the future, we still figure we need to do a lot more education, a lot more messaging and branding throughout the terminal, and maybe consolidating our recycling versus having just a recycling container and a landfill container next to each other.
Yep. Well, thank you, Vince. I appreciate that, and thank you, Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Vince.
Oh, look at that, Christy's her voice. So there really are, and I'll hand it right back over to you, Christy, in just a second, but there really are
Sure.
2 particular reasons why we invited the 2 of you. And one is, Vince, to talk, you know, one thing that really stands out to me about your grant application was the fact that you did the work ahead of time to do the waste audit. You really dug in and were able to kind of provide some information, some data for us to look at and to understand, and it was clear that you understood your waste stream and the challenges and the specific goals that you were trying to achieve. So that was really made it a very strong and easy review for us to understand and to support that grant. And then Kevin, really, I think the reason we wanted you on board was not only have you been through this process a little bit and could speak to the amount of realistically the amount of time that it takes to kind of put a grant together, but you could also just speak to this fact that just like today, you can't always anticipate what's going to happen, and so within this grant process, there is flexibility built in. Communication being the key, as you highlighted during your presentation. So let me just see real quick whether there are, excuse me, whether there's any questions here online for either Vince or Kevin, specifically on their projects.
And while you're doing that, I would say, Vince, I really do like your water bottle fillers at the airport. I enjoy the ticking away when you fill a bottle. It's very satisfying somehow to feel like you've contributed when that happens. And I would also just comment that I know for me personally, as someone who has been through the process, I would encourage everyone out there who's interested in applying to not hesitate to reach out to anybody they can find on the list. I know the communities that I've talked to are all willing to talk to people about their projects and about how to be successful with things. So don't hesitate to reach out to the communities and other people who have applied in the past.
Kevin, I do have one quick question for you that came in, and that is that now that you've talked about the downtown recycling program, you talked about the residential compost drop-off, that what would be, do you have ideas for the next, Westerville project when it comes to waste diversion? Do you have something on the radar screen?
Yes, was that sent in by our intern that is listening on?
No, actually, it was
not. No, our next project is intended as a zero waste plan proposal. So we're excited about that possibility. Just in the last 4 years, we've really had a shift in terms of our city council. We have biennial planning meetings with city council that they start to lay out priorities. And for the last 2 times now, basically a third of those priorities that have come out of it have been sustainability related. So we're really fortunate, really excited that there's a lot of support for these types of activities right now. And we're getting to do some exciting things, but ours is a zero waste proposal will be coming in here in a month or so.
That's great, thank you. I have a couple other questions I want to pass on. One of them is specific to Kevin in Westerville, and that's just about whether you have had any kind of engagement or thoughts about schools and composting.
We have had some thoughts. We have not had any real serious discussions yet. We're fortunate in Westerville that we have what's called the Westerville Partnership, and that is 5 basic entities, but the schools, the city, the Chamber of Commerce, Otterbein University, and I think it's the Ministerial Association is the 5th partner. Don't hold me to that one off the top of my head. Sorry about that. But that's a great group for getting these things out to the public, and we have good relationships on these types of items. I know just in doing some research, Ellie has done a great job reaching out to some of these partners and has already talked to the schools about recycling programs and trying to be more consistent across the schools, even just with recycling, because that's a major issue from school to school. They finally got a consistent provider across all the schools now. And so I think that will help that process. But we try to take the baby steps. One of my favorite quotes these days is focus on the step in front of you rather than the whole staircase. So we're trying to move forward, but that's one of the steps along the way that we'll try to undertake.
Thank you. I've got another good question here. This one is from Anna. Her question is, and I'm just going to try to handle this one myself, and I'll see if Christy has anything to add as well. It says, what are some ways community organizations might collect data about waste in their neighborhoods if they don't have funds for audits? And I don't know that I can answer that question very specifically without knowing more about the details, but it's a really good example of the kind of question that it kind of comes back to what you talked about, Kevin. We're available, SWACO's available to kind of help think through some of those kind of questions. Christy really spends a tremendous amount of time with potential grant applicants, talking through not only the challenges of the issues that they're facing and potential solutions, but also kind of what could be done to gather the information to make a strong grant application. So again, without knowing more details, and I don't think I can really address your specific question other than to say, let's connect offline, let's connect later today or tomorrow. Christy will provide her contact information later, and let's talk that through, because maybe we can come up with some ideas on how to address that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Bear with me here for 1 second. I have a bunch more questions. I just want to scroll through them.
And
Okay.
Andrew, I have allotted some time at the end too for questions. We have a few more slides to just get through.
Yeah. Let's jump back into the slides. We have some good questions. They're kind of specific to composting and things like that, and we'll see if it makes sense to address them later on in the presentation. So let's get back onto the slides, Christy.
Sure. And thank you so much, Kevin and Vince, for joining us and sharing that information. I apologize. I got kicked offline there for a second, so if I was out of sync with you while you were talking, I apologize for that hiccup. I'm just going to quickly spend a few more minutes on discussing some more specifics relating to the grant. We did a waste characterization study last year, and came up with this slide illustrating the top 10 materials thrown away in Central Ohio. It's a little bit hard to read, but essentially 76% of the material that could be diverted, that we receive at the landfill, could be diverted through recycling and composting programs. And so, the top materials in this include food scraps, corrugated cardboard, and other compostable and fibrous materials. And so I just want to point that out and also to say that we're still getting a lot of recyclable material like bottles and cans that could also be diverted through recycling programs. And so I say that to kind of lead into this slide because we really want to ensure that folks understand what is accepted for recycling in our local systems. And so, you know, our hope is that you'll work to divert some of these materials through your recycling programs, like the paper and the cardboard, plastic bottles and jugs, glass bottles and jars, carton containers, cans, and then always keeping them loose. And this is important to understand because it is going to something to consider when you're thinking about the feasibility of your projects, really. And so sometimes, you know, we receive very well-intended applications where an applicant has proposed, you know, recycling cups and straws, for example, which currently those items are not accepted in recycling programs. And so really the point here is just for you to understand what is accepted, what isn't accepted. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask. In terms of the grant funding, the minimum is $500 and the maximum is $35,000. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, applicants must demonstrate a 25% cash contribution towards the project. In terms of eligibility and eligible use of funds, we will fund durable, reusable equipment to be used for waste reduction and recycling programs, as well as composting. We will fund supplies for education and outreach and awareness activities. And we will fund professional services that you've not already or are already not currently paying for. So it could be to pay for the haul away of recyclable materials, or it could be to work with a consultant to develop a study or conduct a waste audit or assessment. And this can also, these items can also be found in our application package as well. But, you know, this just kind of walks you through a little bit of the ineligible uses of funds, in-house personnel costs, solid waste costs, hazardous waste recycling, single or non-durable costs, so disposable bags or cutlery. And this does include compostable cutlery and serviceware. Ultimately, it is being disposed of, even if it is being composted. And then any other costs unrelated to waste reduction and or diversion activities would be ineligible for this program. Just want to also make you aware of some important dates. We have another webinar next Wednesday, July 29th at the same time, where we'll be more focused on kind of the nuts and bolts of applying, how to make your grant application stronger, and a little bit more specifics relating to that application process. We do welcome you to submit draft applications. The last day to submit those for review is Friday, July 31st. And then our deadline for submitting our final applications is August 28th before 5 p.m. And then this is our timeline. So our evaluation committee will review and score those applications September through November. We will notify all applicants of their status in November and December. And then before we kick off the 2021 calendar year, we will meet with all of our grant recipients to share more information about executing a grant agreement and partnering with SWACO throughout this process. Okay, so I think now, Andrew, we can turn it back over and answer some more questions for those that have time to spend. And then the screen just has some contact information up for anyone that would like to reach out with questions or concerns.
Thank you, Christy. Appreciate it. I do have a few questions here. The first thing I want to do is just a shout out of some appreciation to the attendees today. I think we've lost only one person despite all those technical difficulties. So you guys have great grit to hang with us through this, and we do appreciate it. I'm going to interpret a couple of these questions just because the one is just for you, Christy. It's a question. The question would be, would a church be eligible to apply for a grant?
Yeah, certainly. On the application document, we ask for your federal tax ID number. So if you are a not-for-profit, you are eligible.
Mm-hmm. The other question, a number of questions really just related to composting and food waste diversion. And I don't know that there's anything specific other than to maybe say that the slide, Christy, that you presented on the recent waste characterization study, indicates that we know that a lot of food waste is ending up in the landfill, and so it has become, quite a trend. Kevin talked about it. We funded a number of programs associated with it, so it is certainly something that there's a growing interest, and is definitely an eligible an activity for grant funding. And if you have specific questions on a potential project, it's really the reason for today's webinar was to try to get the wheels turning, try to stimulate some ideas and questions. So if you have some specific questions on a food waste or a composting related one, follow up with Christy, grants@swaco.org, or Christy's email there or phone number directly, and we can talk through some of the details. Let me just kind of encourage anybody online to ask any additional questions, any thoughts, any ideas that you have for grant projects. We've still got a few more minutes. We'd be happy to address your questions. And I'm not seeing any more, so we may be good. I just will reiterate what Christy just said, which is we do have another webinar coming up. It's going to be much more nuts and bolts on the application. If you're going to participate in that, we'd really encourage you to download the application and read it through, because we're really going to be digging in on that. If you have some ideas, unanswered questions, thoughts, even just want to kind of pick our brain in terms of what would make a strong grant application, or how to overcome some of the challenges of putting together the data and the things like that, Christy's contact information is there. Would love to talk to you about it. I want to also thank Kevin and Vince again for your participation. 2 great projects, 2 great programs that we can all kind of take advantage of the learnings that you guys have. So we do appreciate you being online. Christy, why don't you maybe close us out here?
Yeah, sure. I think, you pretty much summed it up, Andrew. I am happy to talk with anyone about any ideas that you have. And I think, just to kind of reiterate, it's really best to reach out in advance of submitting your application and run your ideas by us. I think it helps to submit a stronger application, and then that way you're not wasting your time drafting something that may include ineligible items. And so I would just stress the importance of that, and then also downloading the application in advance. If you and we hope that you will join us next Wednesday at 1 for our next webinar, and just reviewing the application before you jump on for that one, I think will help everybody come prepared. And so thank you all, as Andrew mentioned, for hanging in there with us today, and great thanks to our partners as well.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.